Welcome everyone to the AERA second town hall session of this week, where we want to focus especially on the 2021 virtual annual meeting and also cover other issues with respect to the meeting planning and other activities that we're doing that signal what we are as an association and what we seek and aspire to be in holding virtual convenings, both for the annual meeting and otherwise. And also as we reflect on ourselves and our value premises and how we want to interact as a community. So I like to think and want to send a signal as your executive director, whether you are a member of AERA or not, that imagine that we're in a living room together and that this will not be a highly formal and structured session, although we hope to impart information to you that will be of value to you, both when you think about participation in the 2021 annual meeting and when you think about AERA as a resource. But much of the meeting will actually be driven by you. I want to just say and signal that we have ASL interpreter throughout the meeting. We also have closed captioning. And so if you see along the bottom, the little arrow, if you pick that up, you will have the closed captioning visible to you. We will both have the chat open and available as well as Q&A. We seem to have, we're probably approaching around 300 participants now. We had over 400 on Tuesday. And so while we would love to have the individual chit chat that we would be able to have if we were together or if we actually were able to have a place-based town hall meeting, that was not to be for this year, but we want to create a sense of intimacy both in these sessions and in others that will follow up from what we learned from you. So this is really about all of us. It's really a collaboration as we see most of what AERA chooses to do as having at its foundation. And certainly as we think about the various ways we will co-create the 2021 annual meeting. So part of this creation for me are my colleagues who are with me. Most in particular and especially Sean Harper, our 2020-21 president, who I will ask to say a few words in a minute, but I will control the stage enough to say that we've been friends and kind of buddies and collaborators in terms of field building and in terms of issues of inclusivity for years. And we could not have timed a better president. He might not have known that when he said he would run for office, but a better president in terms of what we want to do and who we want to be as an association, even in these times in which we can't literally be together in the ways that we always would prefer. So with that, let me just have Sean speak to you, and then he will participate throughout the town hall meeting. Sean?
Thank you so much, Felice, for getting us off to such a great start and setting, I think, the perfect context for our time together this afternoon or this evening, wherever you are in the world. To our members and colleagues, thank you all for taking time out of your busy lives and homeschooling and writing and researching and teaching and all the things that you're doing to come and think with us about the 2021 AERA annual meeting. I am so impressed by the number of colleagues who have shown up this afternoon and earlier this week. It is a real demonstration of care for our scholarly community and for our association. Felice is right. When I accepted the responsibility of leading our association at this time, I had no idea that I would become the pandemic president. I will say, though, right, that while I certainly don't want to make light of the loss of life and the devastation and the loss of jobs and livelihood that the pandemic has brought to way too many of our families and communities, I will say, though, that I do think that we have a real opportunity here with the 2021 annual meeting to be decidedly innovative, decidedly inclusive, and to think of new ways to, reach more people potentially who are engaged in educational research. So I am very much looking forward to that. I have a really, really, really terrific team of program chairs: Toby Jenkins from University of South Carolina, Lori Patton Davis from The Ohio State University, and Daniel Sugenda from California State University, Stanislaus. We have been hard at work, the four of us, along with Felice and Robert Smith and everybody else there at the AERA office. We've been thinking, really innovatively about next year's convening. So I'm just really excited. We're looking forward to hearing your ideas, your questions, your feedback in this forum. I left Tuesday's town hall with like 4 pages of handwritten notes of things that members had me thinking about, certainly through the questions they raised for us. So I'm looking forward to engaging with you all this afternoon. Felice, I will turn it back over to you to lead us through our agenda.
All right, well, I will, and I should say the agenda for those who want to see it in a more full and continuous motif. It is posted in the chat, so it's online and you can pull it up. I think I saw a question already in the chat about the availability of this event after the event, and it will be, we're kind of in a rehearsal mode, so in terms of the logistics and technology, for a few minutes before we start. So we need to edit that out, but the one from Tuesday is already posted on our website, and I would guess that this will be, given a weekend, probably be posted by Tuesday. And we certainly want these to be catalytic for others to see and to use our annual meeting email box to bring new questions to the fore. We will not be able to, of course, cover every aspect of the chat as much as we want to engage you in that conversation or the Q&A, but we'll use that material to create fact sheets as we both make more decisions and as we both address the issues on your mind. So we see this as we hope, informative, but very formative, if I can use that language of formative, in us learning from you and taking where we are to refine and expand what we do. I think there's one premise that I know is at the heart of AERA and at the heart and soul of Sean and I and our leadership, is that we always aim to strive better, to be an inclusive community. And that's not just about convenings and meetings. That's about how we execute all of our work and what our expectations are of each other, whether it's writing a review for a manuscript that was submitted, or whether it's those moments of being reflective about whether subtly or sometimes not so subtly persons are included or excluded. We give a lot of attention to that and want to give even more attention because we all recognize that climate and culture is not just about the codes of ethics or the AERA policy on awards and honors and fellow status, but it's about taking those documents and making them an internalized part of our life. So while we see the annual meeting as kind of the big elephant in the room, this extrapolates to all kinds of things that we do. And so from these kinds of conversations, we learn more about other ways that we need to be accountable and mutually accountable and collectively accountable. So that one of the points that we want to emphasize is that the annual meeting is really for all and about all. It's not when one goes to some sessions where there's greater sensitivity and perhaps the invitational 10 sessions from the Committee on Social Justice, and then one walks into another room, whether it's a virtual room or a place-based room, and it's so crowded that you can't even navigate and have your thoughts understood or expressed, or even navigate in terms of mobility issues. Now, some of those things are less central to a virtual meeting, but there are other issues that are equally as central, and that we consider those not only as we plan for 2021, but as we rethink who we are and what we would like to be for all forms of activities and convenings. And I think that's kind of the premise of how we operate and how we want you to think about not just 2021, but what we are as a community together. So while you may have seen this as a topic called Creating on the Agenda an Inclusive Community for All, we mean that not just as words on an agenda, but as a living way that, whether it's the leadership, the staff, or our members or attendees, that we need to take collective ownership for the ranges of activities and programs that are worthwhile for AERA both to offer as well as to rethink.
And Felice,
yes.
I'll just jump in quickly and say
please.
here that we're learning so much already from the series of virtual programs that we are doing this summer, and we're getting really good feedback. And my sense is that we're getting better each time that we do one of these virtual convenings because of the feedback that we get from our members and the participants. So I am fully confident that by April 2021, we will, really have a lot of feedback that will poise us to deliver a high quality, incredibly inclusive and accessible virtual meeting.
Right. And you'll see that in a lot of the issues that we'll raise briefly, so that we want to put as much emphasis for 2021 on the informal interaction, the opportunity to meet up, just as in the 9 courses, so many of the instructors or the faculty of those courses, we have, I think, 2 more to go, will say and have indicated to those who've registered, at the end of the meeting, I'm going to put my laptop down, come back on this Zoom, and we're just going to hang out together. And those hangout sessions have ranged from 45 minutes to an hour and a half. I mean, people are just enjoying that kind of networking and communicating substantively and interpersonally. And there'll be a lot of that as we think about the annual meeting. I just want to take a moment because my colleagues come back for a second or two. I wanted to, Badut, you want to turn on your camera? Badut Acharia is our, who sometimes is not on camera, but he's, there he is. Hi, Badut.
Hello.
He is our IT systems administrator, and anything technological that you see or do, he's touched and invented for us and with us. George Wimberly is not on camera. Many of you know him as our Director of Professional Development, and we're also thinking and rethinking out how our professional development programs and offerings can be and will be delivered this year. Robert Smith, our Director of Meetings, is not only the director of the 2021 meeting, but he's plays a prominent role in driving all of our meetings and events, small and large. Tony Pauls will be handling the Q&A, so you will hear him as a voice, somewhat voice over the town hall meeting, but we'll be synthesizing the Q&A. And Nathan Bell, Director of Governance and Special Projects, I teased him into saying, well, handling the chat's your special project of the day, trying to at least extrapolate from the chat to also frame issues. So you should use whatever modality you feel most comfortable, post things in the chat or the Q&A, and we will be turning to that. Robert, as I talk a little bit about building upon 2020 and opportunities and transitions, maybe you want to pull up the interactive presentation gallery. I'm going to talk about this in the context of what still is available to persons who had papers, of which there were over 5,000, and what will be available in 2021. So let me describe this. But for anyone who gave a paper, whether the paper was in a symposia or a paper session, there is an opportunity for you still to create an interactive presentation that will be in our gallery forever. That's not the formal paper that may be in our paper repository. This is as you would present it, or as you might have presented it to colleagues in a paper session, a symposia, a poster session, or a roundtable. But instead of using a PowerPoint or a handout in a roundtable or a flat poster board, this is an opportunity, and still remains an opportunity, for you to create what is essentially a web-based presentation, that where you can put up video, you can put up animation. There's many different templates. I think there are 9 different templates in format. And Robert, do you want to just pop one on? You can do that. There's 2 important features that I think we want to encourage you both to think about, and we're going to put some of these live ones on the ARA website. And that is, you might view the 2020 paper as, oh, well, that's what I would have done in April. This is an opportunity to engage in social networking and community outreach with colleagues worldwide who might find an interest in your work. So you will be able to schedule, if you wish, a synchronous session. That will be true this year, and that will be true after the annual meeting next year and during the annual meeting next year. You can do chat, you can do Q&A, and we encourage with these presentations for you to give an overall narration that shouldn't be longer than 6 to 8 minutes, but can be as long or short as you might like. The deadline for this is going to be extended to October 30th, because we wanted those who were planning to give papers in symposia also to have an opportunity to do those presentations. Robert, do you want to just activate one of these? You'll be able to search by division, SIG, keyword, author, and really what we see this to be, as it will be at the annual meeting and now with your ongoing work, essentially an opportunity to share your research, cultivate engagement, and have others interact with you around your, not the paper that you will be giving, assuming acceptance in 2021, but your ongoing work from 2020. Robert, can you just activate one? These are actually completed ones from those several hundred who have already created these narratives. Give you just so that's one template that was selected, and I think the first author starts with an overall narration.
Hi, bienvenida. My name is Dr. Lori Santamaria. Welcome to our presentation, Sustainable Mixteco Indígena Research, Methodology toward Equal Status Stakeholder and Indigenous Collaboration. I work with a team comprised of Adriana Diego, Liliana Manriquez, Doña Alberta Salazar, Claudia Lozano, Luisa León Salazar, and Sylvia Garcia Aguilar. We work on behalf of the Mixteco Indígena Community Organizing Project. We're also working with the California Mental Health Services Act and with Ventura County Behavioral Health. Those are our stakeholders.
Robert, turn on one of the slides to give a sense of what one could upload as part of their presentation.
So, la manera en que nosotros estamos investigando es una manera que yo no pensé, que yo cuando apenas comencé me dijiste que dijiste que era una investigación. Yo siempre pensé que era on the computer researching or just googling up something, Wikipedia.
Yo digo que no tiene nada que ver si somos
Okay, Robert. The reason why I wanted to show this is both about 2020, but more about 2021. Participation in the, of your presentation is both asynchronous, meaning you create this in advance. You have a lot of latitude about that. Along the bottom of a presentation is a narration that is oral, but we are transcribing those presentations so that they can be easily read. What you're seeing here in blue and beige, in order to be visually more accessible for some with sight issues, there are contrasting versions that will be black on white and white on black. As I said, that you as an author or co-author include author information, include contact information, and if you have a paper in the paper repository, it will connect to that paper. So it's a wonderful way of really not only presenting your work, but presenting your work in accessibly well into the future. So while we are encouraging those who have not used this in 2020, this is, Robert, you can take it off the screen. This is really the one of the backbones of the mode of presentation. Instead of having a handout, instead of a flat poster board or a PowerPoint that is so both unidimensional and sometimes inaccessible, we were actually going to use this also for our place-based meeting. But whether it's a symposia, whether it's a structured poster session, whether it's a paper session, the preparation of your presentation will use this interactive presentation piece. Of course, if you are giving it live in a symposia virtually, you're not going to put your narration on, but you have the opportunity after the meeting of then overlaying your narration so that this becomes accessible year-long in the gallery, so that the annual meeting becomes the epiphany moment, whether virtual or place-based, to do your work in interaction with the community. But then the product really becomes part of something that will be accessible after the annual meeting. So that both, as we look toward 2021, and we were going to offer this place-based, but this is a wonderful foundational way of presenting your work both synchronously and asynchronously. And in addition to what might be your scheduled session, you will be able to schedule additional sessions with those in the community, just as you might say, let's have lunch together, or let's have breakfast, when in a session people come up to you and the next session's about to begin. You'll be able to say, well, I've set something up for the week after the annual meeting. Let's get together and we could talk about the implications of my work for your work, and other ways of having this informal networking opportunity. So while we will have symposia sessions and papers in symposia, and we will have roundtables and paper sessions, as well as the presentations in the poster session motif. This way of preparing your presentation has a lot more continuing flexibility to for you to engage with the community and for the community also to engage with you around the work that you're doing. We expect, although this was going to be the first year of a 4-day place-based meeting, as those of you who have gone to the full meeting know, day 1 started midday, and day 5 really was a somewhat lower programming day that didn't go a full day and tended to have less sessions. So we will have a pretty packed full day. We're going to start day 0 with, in other words, the early evening before, where we're going to have an opening plenary that I anticipate will make benefit of the most interactive ways of addressing how we open the meeting thematically as a community, and we'll continue to have an opening event or set of events to allow for social networking and hanging out together. The professional development courses will, as we've learned through the creation and innovations with the 9 that we've offered, are likely to be in the afternoon, and the 4-hour courses, and not the full day courses, for the obvious reason that there's a time zone issue that we want to pay attention to, and also kind of a absorption of concentration and energy in a course. If there are courses that should require it, although I think we're thinking of the dominant motif as the 4-hour course, it would be better to break it up in 2 pieces than to oversaturate one's both attention cognitively and I suppose socio-emotionally as well. Those workshops will the annual meeting ends on a Monday. Those courses, professional development courses, will be Tuesday through Friday. We had a question in the first town hall meeting around the pre-day workshops and professional development mentoring activities of divisions and SIGs. Some may choose to have it, as they are already, at different times, but those who choose to have it as pre-day events, ARA will, as we have, support doing those virtually. I think one of the most important parts of what we're also trying to create is informal opportunities to meet up. And so that might take the form on registration, where you would list some of your interests. We would then try to both identify issues, but also have attendees organically be able to identify issues where you could say at the end of a reception or an event, we want to get together with, to talk to others on this research issue or that research topic. And one of the platform features will be a platform feature that will allow for informal gatherings. If there turns out to be a very strong interest in one arena or topic than another, then we will as readily open 2 of those than to have 100 persons in the room, although many of us have moderated social interactions with 60 or 70 or 80 persons. So that is in our examining platforms, in our examining options, in our examining how you could crowdsource your interest to meet with others, to meet potentially in the way that the fireside chats have offered, meeting with leading mentors in the field, or sessions like the presidential session that Hank Frierson has done, which is a formal presidential session, Conversations on Black Scholarship. We can use the breakout session modality so that there are 30 concurrents, and perhaps instead of having an hour and a half, we have 40, and then you sign up in advance, and then we reshuffle, and then you can go to your second table. That will very much be part of the formal type of session offering, but we want to be able to, in virtual space, have as many opportunities for informal meetups. I think that maybe with that, I don't know how many questions we've seen on either the chat or Q&A, but let me at least open it up for an initial set of questions, and then we can cover some of the issues. But some of the best questions really came organically from you, and that's what this is about.
So Felice, we've had a number of questions about the interactive presentations gallery. So we have a question about whether the gallery will be available to anyone and will be live online forever.
The 2020 is available for everyone. As many of you know, we returned all registration fees, and every aspect of the 2020 meeting is available for everyone. There will be registration for the 2021 meeting. So seeing that presentation during the meeting and participating in the derivative Zooms, or I'm calling them Zooms. It could be WebEx, or it could be, well, the other modalities that could be scheduled by the authors. During the meeting mode, those would be part of the registration. As with the online paper repository, that is available as something that AERA offers as an open access product. So in the, I guess it was asked, the in perpetuity, there will be a point after what we consider to be the annual meeting programming that the gallery 2 would be available for registrants and non-registrants. But participation in the chats, the Q&A that would happen during and immediately after the annual meeting would be a registration option. Though ultimately, like the paper repository, our interest is always in making knowledge accessible, facilitating networking, and facilitating a community. It may be a question that will emerge that the registration will be quite affordable and much below place-based annual meeting registration for members, and members than non-member registrants. We encourage, of course, membership and this benefit of membership. And with registering for the annual meeting, that brings with it tangible opportunity, whether place-based or this year virtual. But ultimately, as with the online paper repository, the presentations will be accessible some period of time after what we would view to be the annual meeting and the events scheduled interrelated around the annual meeting.
Okay, someone else has asked when they will be able to access the templates in order to practice making interactive posters.
Well, if you did it in 2020, if you're still doing it in 2020, it's actually, we're going to send a reminder letter, and you can all start practicing with 2020. It will be available, and you can, if you've done a PowerPoint, this is easier. I've played around with it, and we're going to post real live examples of them. There's lots of help in doing it, although it doesn't require great help. I think the accurate, precise answer, and Robert, jump in if I cite this wrong, but once your paper is accepted, you will have access to maybe 10 days later, but essentially in November, the portal will be open for any, just as you can upload your paper, really a revised paper, the end point is in March, but you can upload your paper, a revised version of your paper after acceptance in December or January or February. So you will have time to do that. We'll probably even put up a demonstration prototype because it's to everyone's collective interest to do this. And it's a much more accessible product, not just for those who create it, but really for attendees, for users. They can stop in the middle of a slide and rerun it and think, so that, so it's being controlled by the user, even though you create the content. Of course, if you set up a Zoom-like meeting, it's when you want to schedule it, or you have a chat, it's when you want to do it. And you can do more than one of those.
Okay, someone else has asked whether the templates of the virtual presentations will have a mandatory requirement that they be accessible. For instance, will all have accessible contrast? Will all embedded videos be closed captioned, etc.?
So what I went over that contrast very quickly. The contrast feature will be available in 2021 for 2021, and it will either be so that you can take something like the one we demonstrated that had so many different colors that might affect visual readability, and you will be able to switch to black over white or white over black, meaning you can control the contrast at the will of the user. So we're paying a lot of attention to accessibility, and indeed have been, from the first we heard about this product that we've reinvented in a way for this purpose. That was one of our numero one requirements, so that we are taking the verbal presentation, and where it says narration, which in the way that it has been used has only been oral, we have now downloaded the oral of what we have uploaded so far, and we're transcribing it. So it will say narration oral or voice, or narration read. And so, and of course the reading will be able to be amplified to, larger or smaller. So I'll say we're trying to anticipate accessibility in a way that way goes beyond anything PowerPoint has been able to do, or that one has experienced at place-based meetings. And we welcome, while the invention is one that it's not our product, but we're co-creating the product, and we'll try to anticipate as much as we can. Now, in the sessions that are presentations, so if somebody is presenting an interactive presentation instead of a PowerPoint that is let's say a Zoom session, that session, and therefore everything that has been said, will be closed captioned. So that product itself will be available not after the annual meeting, after the session, within some number of hours or the next day, so that if you're in a roundtable or a paper session or a symposia, if you're using the interactive presentation, you probably aren't narrating, someone is speaking, but that would be closed caption. That's going to be captured in video, and that closed captioning will be accessible.
Okay, someone else.
Tony, if I can jump in real quick. The platform that iPosters uses to upload videos into your presentation is YouTube. YouTube does have a setting that allows you to add closed captioning automatically to that video. So it will be accessible to our presenters to be able to turn that on and post those videos with closed captioning already turned on.
Okay, someone has asked, well, someone has noted that the meeting is usually a great opportunity for PhD students to get in touch with more senior researchers. They would like to know how that would be accommodated in the virtual platform.
Yeah, I think that there's several ways. One, of course, we're working closely with our SIGs and our divisions on this very issue of social networking in sort of the, I'll say, the organic units that are part of AERA, but we very much value, and because we haven't yet selected the product, I can show you the ones we're looking at, but we very much value these informal opportunities and recognize the significance of the informal opportunities for graduate students, for early career scholars to not only network with each other, but also with more senior persons in the field, where if you go to a reception and let's say Sean is my advisor and I'm my third year in my first assistant professor position, and Sean then says, oh, let me introduce you to X because I think your interest in faculty mobility really would harmonize with X, then who's going to make that connection? And so we're trying not only to have a product that allows for those meetups, but also to do some planning around, that's why I use the reference to fireside chats, extrapolating from the informal kinds of ways in which we've been able to do that at AERA to how we build that into the informal co-curricula. And that's why I said that we may, in the registration, ask registrants more specifically about some interest they might have in, not who you might want to meet, but in what areas and in what arenas, so that some of the products that we've been looking at kind of use a little bit of AI technology to make those connections. And then part of what we would seek to do is to identify some more senior persons that would make themselves available for some of those informal moments. I think the divisions and SIGs will be very good collaborators, and there's some design ways that we're thinking about doing some things AERA did in a non-virtual way. In 2009 at the annual meeting, we introduced informal working groups that continued through, the president introduced it, through I think Chris Gutierrez's year, which would have been 2011. So I think it ran 3 or 4, where we posted topics and people could sign up in advance. There'd be a group leader. That was a more senior person with expertise in that area. They tended to relate to the presidential theme, and that people could sign up, and we maxed them out at 25 or 30. If there's demand for that, we could even spawn a second group. Now, can we spawn 50 groups? Well, if there were tremendous demand, maybe not. But we didn't, for a place-based meeting, exceed our capacity. That was something that Sean and I started talking about, even when we were not thinking virtually, to be able to have more spontaneous working groups. And in some of those instances, those groups continue to network and convene and collaborate well after the annual meeting. So that's sort of what we're trying to do, is also come up with the technological capacity, but then we have to think through what the substantive ways of doing this, so that an early career scholar or a graduate student don't have to make the connections on their own. And whether it's having some of our fellows from our fellows program be resource persons in rooms certain times of day to talk about X or Y or Z, or whether it's career building or navigating the job market or a substantive area. We're going to try to build in those informal moments into the co-curricula and welcome ideas. You know, I'd say numero uno is we want to invent it. And these are some of the ways we're thinking about making it real and valuable, frankly, well beyond the annual meeting, well beyond the annual meeting, meaning even rolling up to the annual meeting and beyond that. So we appreciate and recognize that many of our earlier career scholars are at the leading edge of experimenting with some of the technological capacity. So email us genuinely, so genuinely that you could even send it, not just to the annual meeting box, but my email's public record, flevine@aera.net. We really are, this is a real high priority. It has been in some of the work that we're doing leading to our survey that we're going to be fielding, focused on doctoral students and early career scholars. With all of the ways people do connect, there's a real interest, and all the ways maybe people even feel Zoom overload. There's a real message that one of the losses of the isolation is how to connect, and that's a big loss when you don't have a place-based meeting. And to the extent we can invent options and opportunities, I'm going to say we're really into it. It's something I know Sean wants to do, the staff wants to do, and I'm passionate about it.
Let's turn to Nathan for what he's seeing in the chat.
So, Felice, I've got a two-part question. First of all, will we be providing training and technical support for individuals who are uploading information to the interactive presentation gallery? And for those individuals who upload materials to the gallery, are there data on how many times their presentation is viewed?
I believe I think there are metrics in the way that there's a URL. Each presentation will have a URL. You'll be able to put your URL on your resume. So it has a unique URL, and we'll have to work that through. But my impression when we were thinking about using it, when we were first inventing it for going virtual in April in 2020, that we can track that just as papers in the paper repository. There is already aids and guides. There's a support team that helps. I think it's seeming a little bit more formidable than anyone will find it, but we'll walk you through. Staff will walk you through, but the iPoster team, many of you who have 2020 presentations, we're going to get this announcement again saying you still have the opportunity to do it. Where you are doing it is less an upload. You're actually in, imagine, my daughter used to love this, who's now an adult, but that she loved going to the, where you go and you make your own little pot and you can spin your pot. You're going to be creating this in a space. The one thing that you upload are things like or animation, or if you've recorded your narration, but it's not really much different than if you're submitting, let's say, a proposal to the Spencer Foundation or the National Science Foundation, where it says, or to AERA, where it says upload your Vita. So you just upload it, and there's demonstrations. It's pretty user friendly, and yes, you'll have, if anybody's stymied, we'll walk you through. Both for 2020 and for 2021.
There's another question, Felice, about the registration fee for the 2021 annual meeting and whether that has been set and what it might be.
We're trying to get a handle on our costs. We gave, well, as I said, it will be material, but we don't yet have a number. For members, it will be really a substantial reduction. And so it won't be free, that's for sure. but it will be, you know, sort of prorated by type. It will be a visible drop of, depending upon the class of membership, certainly over $50, $60, $70 in that neighborhood. We're going to make it as low as we can, given that, as you can imagine, it's not without cost. It is without, it does reduce our costs, but it's not without cost.
All right, and the last question before I turn it back to Tony, can you talk a little bit about the business meetings for SIGs and divisions and how we're going to structure
Good
and support
question.
those?
Good question. We're planning, in terms of the time, we're planning on starting the meeting later. One might think about it as mountain time, but it probably will start more like 10 on East Coast time, or and go until about 5. And then the business meeting in East Coast time, and the business meetings then would start at 5 or 5:30, depending upon when we end, and then can lead to a business meeting and a social event. And we will be providing the technology for both of those for units that, I should say, may wish to do so, but we're going to encourage the use of that informal space and formal space. Now, one of the formal space for the business meeting, it might be that, for example, Sean, who's going to introduce me as the early career scholar to X, it might be that we might want to do things like signing up for the reception so that we can think about different forms of networking during that reception opportunity. But nothing will be a sign up that will be gated, meaning just like you all signed up here, so that I could tell you that we've got, 3 people from Singapore, and God knows, I know it's 4 in the morning, bless your hearts, and Japan, China, Australia, New Zealand. So we value our Southern Hemisphere folks. So those will be part of the meeting and will be integral to the annual meeting.
Okay, we have a question about whether the shift to the virtual meeting will open more opportunities for accepting papers and sessions.
I'll say it could, meaning consonant with peer review quality. So we're anticipating, based on submissions, a meeting that's in terms of participations, that we're sort of modeling it based on kind of our typical annual meeting, which probably is larger than Toronto. San Francisco tended to have a huge submission, maybe a little bit more like our centennial. What I always say, and I ran a program for a number of years at the National Science Foundation, when people would ask me what the success rate was, I'd say, I'll go to bat with you for every penny I can find anywhere. So the first order of business is it good? If it's good and the peer review suggests it's good, we certainly want to maximize opportunities consonant with merit review, recognizing that a paper or a session that has reviewed well, like an open access submission, is less constrained by the number of rooms. Now, that may mean more poster sessions and more roundtables. It won't change essentially the session allocation, which is 1,000. The only way to do that would be to add more days to the annual meeting. There's only so many concurrents that even with, I say the pluses as an attendee is if you're going to one session, you know, you can see the next one in a month or in 3 weeks or the next day. So you'll be able to design your program just as the app has permitted you to create your schedule. You'll be able to create a schedule and then create a fallback schedule.
I have a question about how time zones will be accommodated.
Well, one of the ways, at least in this continent, is to start later so that we span in a more user-friendly way. But we really value both our international participants and our international members. That is part of why we will be, that's not the only reason, but why we're recording everything, and it can be seen at will, and at will within hours, meaning by the next day it would be turned around and accessible. And we're trying to think about what the implications are for whether there's altered sessions for altered scheduling for certain sessions. The one challenge of that is that we really value not having those sessions in other parts of the world separated as if they are not integrated into the program. And actually I was on a WERA, World Education Research Association, as past president. I was on an executive committee meeting this morning at 6 a.m. because my colleagues are range from Singapore to Poland, South Africa. And we were talking about that very issue about the WERA meeting in Spain in July, and how much we value the synergism across colleagues worldwide. So it's not desirable to say, oh, well, we'll accept papers and put them in a session together that is Eastern Europe or, you know, it's sort of matched by time zone, because it's sort of counterintuitive of creating intellectual moments that are cross-cutting. It's on our minds. We welcome advice. I suppose we're certainly thinking about this as widely, as altering the timetable widely around what would typically happen when we are in one time zone. And then I think we're going to pay some attention to what's been accepted. And if there needs to be, you know, any special accommodations for some number of sessions or some number of activities, we'll try to work that through. But the best I can say at this point is the plan to start later, that at least as we try to do with council meetings and committee meetings or our courses, we're 1 to 5 East Coast time and not 8 to 12, just for that reason, to kind of at least maximize the largest swath of attendees.
Someone wanted to know how AERA will decide which presentations will be synchronous. For instance, live on Zoom.
Yeah, well, the synchronous will definitely, yes, definitely, we're aiming, so I'm tentative about the definite, but this is what we're aiming for. And this is what we were aiming for when we thought we would go virtual in April. We're aiming for symposia to be synchronous, and in our specifications for paper sessions and likely for roundtables, using for roundtables a shorter span so that you can circulate across roundtables just as people hop from one to another in a big room. so that an hour and a half might be 2 40-minute roundtables, and that we can use the breakout room motif, as might be true of some of the different modalities for symposia. For the poster sessions, they will have a synchronous option, because during the meeting, the poster presenter can schedule a virtual live meeting. So that is one of the greatest features of what this interactive presentation now offers. And we will, I think our thinking, this is one of those emergent areas, is that the authors will be able to schedule that. That might be true of the roundtables too, as opposed to it being part of our concurrent sessions, that will have it a little bit more author driven. What that does is flatten the curve a little bit. If it's author driven, you might find the ones you're interested in not so conflicting with other things that you want to do. So if this were March of 2020, and I was telling you about going virtual in April, we didn't have this synchronous capacity in the interactive presentation. Now we do, but the way that timing is, it would be scheduled, but it would be scheduled at a time that is author driven, or in the case of a roundtable, we're thinking about the roundtable as being scheduled by us. But if it were to be scheduled by the organizer and the presenters, they would need to pick a time together. So I think that's as close. So if you're saying, if the question embedded in the question was, is this stratified toward the 1,000? We actually think the technology no longer requires that. Will it tip towards symposia and not to the paper sessions? At least our current planning is looking to platforms and capacities that that would permit being synchronous in a similar way for both paper sessions. We use the 1,000 as our number. We will have committee meetings, though separated, so that we have less concurrence. So committee meetings don't have to meet at the annual meeting. The reason why they do is that it's, you know, everybody's at the annual meeting, so it's a good way of having a committee meeting. Those will be scheduled throughout the year, and that will reduce some of what happens simultaneously at a place-based meeting.
Okay, someone asked if we had an update on overall submission rate this year compared to past years.
It varies a lot by unit, as I suppose it does every year. We are somewhat lower, but I'll say not lower in a way that is materially different in the number of, when you kind of combine that, depending upon what the success rate is, it doesn't materially alter the number of sessions. It's modest. We don't know what the merit review will yield. I'd say it's more in the ballpark of some of our sort of San Antonio, Philadelphia, then San Francisco and Chicago in submissions, which are our highest submission cities.
Okay, someone also asked for clarification that the interactive posters would be available for all forms of sessions, including papers, posters, and roundtables.
What will happen in a session is that instead of someone, well, if it's a great debate, right, or a town hall meeting, or an interactive discussion moderated by a chair, that's a symposia that wouldn't have yielded even the briefest PowerPoint type presentation, then it won't happen. But instead of having a PowerPoint presentation and a flat screen, one would be doing their presentation in this web-based product. That doesn't mean you have to narrate because you're going to be there. So that doesn't mean you need to narrate something that that you're speaking to live. It could be, and it didn't come up as a question, but it did come up as a question on Tuesday. Are we thinking about the possibility of pre-recorded? And I said that it's not off the table for potentially some kinds of sessions, or maybe from some locations, but it's not the highest priority. The highest priority is to make this a real and human event, and not have pre-recordings of the vice presidential talk. Some associations have done that. I said, so I hate to be redundant of what I said, but it's I think my best analogy with respect to the kind of human and affective component that my mom's, who's 106, talks about things needing to be really real and genuine in terms of human touch and feel. This, we're trying to make this as good as it could get for this, but maybe our next town hall will even be better, or I might have forgotten doing X or Y or Z. But my mother says, it's not meant, human social interaction, it's not meant to fit like wallpaper. There's been a revival of wallpaper. Everything, all the seams don't have to be aligned. Doesn't have to be perfect. We're not Cecil B. DeMille's here, and we want it to be really good, and we want to have fallback, and so if something happened that there was threatening thunderstorms here, and I thought, what happens if, Robert and Tony and Bajut, and, if we've folded. But then I said to myself, well, there's Sean, and Sean's on the West Coast. I mean, he's as good as you could get, and that would be fun too. So I think we'd like it to be real. We'd like it to be live. That's the one thing that's really missing. Now, we do know that there's been some sessions that in some meetings where there's been pre-recording and then just have the panel come on for the last 20 minutes for the Q&A. I'll tell you my gut feeling about that is it's one of the things we're trying to avoid in sessions. Stand up, 10 to 12 minute presentations, and then you turn it over to that interaction at the end, and by then people are kind of bored and disengaged, And so what I like about this is I think this conversation is better than anything I started with, just because we're hearing from you. And I want to hear from you on a session throughout. So I don't like segmenting too much. I think we don't like segmenting too much, and we're going to try to be as live as possible. And we're thrilled when we were talking with our iPoster colleagues that they too have recognized the need to build in the presentations are in a way synchronous insofar as the user can adjust. They could go to a chat, they could go to Q&A, but the fact that we may have synchronous virtual sessions just adds to the meeting being more virtual, or being more synchronously virtual.
The police, there's a question in chat about mentoring. Are we creating spaces for mentoring opportunities? And if so, would people need to sign up for space and time for those?
Yeah, I think that the one reference that I did make was the more formal mentoring that divisions and SIGs do, which some of that is in these pre-day mentoring workshops. Those are, we will encourage them, and from our point of view, sort of for sure. But I want to give you at least one example that since they're, and I'm sure there are others, indeed I see them in a number of the SIG and division postings, but in Division K, what Dorothea, as Vice President, decided is, since there wasn't a place-based or virtual meeting, they're doing one mentoring, a workshop that's, I don't know how many hours that's in. Maybe it happened already in August or September. And then they have another one planned. So it could be that groups will decide not to overload. We're seeing the annual meeting as kind of starting with that on earlier day one or perhaps the day before, and then with our courses ending the last 4 days, so kind of being a week-long opportunity. But we also realize that when you travel to a meeting, you sort of have made arrangements for other parts of your personal and professional, student, or whatever your role is, life, because you've now in this other place. It's very hard to disentangle that when, depending upon whether we're still working separately and in isolation, or even if we're in our own cities, it's hard to separate yourself. So we don't want to overload, but the formal mentoring opportunities, we're hoping to continue to plan and retain. And as I was trying to suggest with my response to questions about informal moments, it would be my hope, and I know from talking to Sean, his as well, that without becoming formalistic about another set of informal opportunities, we'd like to be able to have opportunities for mentor engagement around specific, either specific issues or areas. Some of that may lead to some new things that the Professional Development Committee might offer, as well as the courses, and we need to think that through. So it's very much on our minds, and the answer is yes. What form it's going to take, we're working on a platform that can support it. And then we need to work on what I call to be drafting our nearest and dearest to execute. But I think there's a lot of interest in recognizing our collective responsibility to mentor and support particularly graduate students and early career scholars. And I think the Graduate Student Council will be able to also share their ideas with us in ways that we can work with the Graduate Student Council, as they do with the fireside chats with divisions, to create those special times. So there might be more early bird breakfasts, not too early, but where we just have more tables around issues that that more senior colleagues in maybe each specialty might, kind of host a breakfast, and you bring your cup of coffee and you have coffee from, in that 9 to 10 a.m. and we just run a tier of those, and other things that won't conflict with the formal program, but will support it.
Elise,
Send those ideas.
Yeah, I was just about to invite our members to do exactly that.
Yeah.
Send us your ideas. We would love to hear them. I'm thinking that given that we've heard this at least a couple times in today's town hall, as well as in the one earlier this week, that we probably should put together a special working group, to think about, some innovative ways to facilitate that kind of mentoring and engagement. So we'll do that, but definitely send us your ideas.
Yeah. And so it definitely drives what we're looking for the platform. And so then we need to think about the best ways of populating it and recognizing that that it's different from how you can do it when you're physically together. So we need to be innovative in compensating for that loss. And our divisions and SIGs, I think, will have some thoughts too, because they may be thinking about additional programming that we hadn't anticipated. Other thoughts?
So Felice, we have one last question. Someone wanted to know if there are plans for a virtual exhibit hall.
Yes, good question. I think I said that on Tuesday on my own notes. Yes, there is definitely plans for a virtual exhibit hall. We may even start, rolling out parts of it in a way that allows for, let's say, authors to connect with publishers and set up meeting times. I think our publishers are very interested in that. Those who register for the meeting will be, getting the classical discounts for products that that they're interested in potentially purchasing. They will. I've already seen so we're going to work with our exhibitors, many of whom have already begun practicing in certain meetings already. We're one of the earliest to make a decision about 2021. And we think the fact that we have will give us a real good ramp to work with our exhibitors. And also in some of the ways that we have been seeking to expand our exhibits that isn't always so easy place-based. So in Toronto, we had an exhibit of, I think it was 4 data archives, from video qualitative data archive, video data archive, ICPSR, and we'll be able to get some dedicated space for those who are data providers, for potentially graduate programs to be able to talk about special features of how they're planning next year. And so there'll be more of this gallery kind of opportunity, but well beyond, and even a potential job fair that we'd like to be able to introduce of real live positions rolling out. And so exhibits is, I think where we have been for some time trying to expand our notion of what exhibiting is, but not that everything would mix together. It's the exhibit notion and the capacity to offer exhibit space with exhibitors, which has ranged from books to some institutions and organizations to technology kinds of offerings and software. That's more than in the works, and that will be something that those who register and come to the annual meeting will be able to have as a key part of participating. We hope it will even be larger because we're reducing the costs that many exhibitors have felt the sting of traveling somewhere and having 2 or 3 on staff in a city. It's kind of in a way a service that they provide. It's not that revenue generating for them, and many have been feeling the high costs of that kind of service in a place-based meeting. So we actually hope we can expand the exhibitor opportunities and not contract it, including international exhibitors.
Felice, a couple of people have asked whether simultaneous translation would be a possibility for the presentations. What we are, I'll say encouraging, meaning not discouraging, but for those who are more comfortable in an alt language, the presentations, including, right, and we announced this in the interactive poster, the presentations can be in one's primary language, as long as half is in English. And we've been doing that at the meeting. Meaning, I suppose it might have been less known, but we've announced it with the interactive presentation. I suppose with the international sessions, like the work I've done at WIRA, we say that as long as sometimes it's a co-author,
one might present in Chinese, Spanish, whatever the language, as long as there's an English, and we'll, in the interactive presentation, we'll also present it that way in terms of the audio recording and even in the transcription. The simultaneous translation into other language in aspiration, that's not an undesirable thing. I'm not sure right now, when we've been holding meetings for, let's say, our Americas Network, where we do simultaneous translation for the network in Spanish, English, and Portuguese, and it's fabulous. It's a very high ticket item to have live simultaneous translation. So, but it's amazing how that technology, probably not as soon as 2021, but how technology has transformed even things like closed captioning. You probably all recognize how your own cell phone is now trained to your voice, so that that's possible. I think that simultaneous translation, I know there's a number of international associations that have been struggling with this. I think that's a product we don't yet contemplate, but we do permit the dual presentation and the dual transcription we will do.
Okay, we don't have any other questions.
Yeah, and I was going to say that I am cognizant of time here.
Yeah.
We have 5 minutes left. I wonder if you and I should maybe make our closing remarks.
Yes, yeah, I was just turning to my watch too. Unless there's anything key that, Nathan, you think we didn't cover on the chat, we'll look at the chat and integrate it into the fact sheets. And Sean, go for it.
Okay, great. I just want to thank, again, all of our members for coming today. I see that 184 of you are still with us, which is a really impressive number. Felice, thank you for your leadership and your thoughtfulness on all of the dimensions of the 2021 annual meeting and every other annual meeting that we have. It's just so great to have someone like you who has thought so deeply about all of the questions that our members brought to this town hall. And again, our team is going to work so hard to ensure that we have an annual meeting that is exciting, substantive, inclusive, accessible. You know, send us any ideas that you may have beyond this forum, and we'll work as hard as we can to be as responsive as possible to those ideas. But yeah, I am hoping that your enthusiasm will be sustained over these next several months as we prepare for a great time in April.
And I really want to underscore that, and this is really about all of us and about you. We do this with a passion because we'll miss being together. I mean, I miss hanging out with my colleagues at AERA. We're all in different home locations. The office has been shut since March 16th. I miss seeing, you know, Sean and kibitzing with him on all kinds of things, although we hang out together. But yet there's been a tremendous space, as Sean began, for innovation, and we're going to try to benefit from that. We think we have, and hearing from you, not just about 2021, but even as we're doing this other programming that we have done and will be doing, it's all part of this co-creation. So just view us as we'll do the heavy lifting, but you're our collaborators. And I can't imagine why on a Friday afternoon, other than the shared passion we have for each other, for our health and well-being, and an appreciation that we need to work together in the most fundamental and human ways as we build that knowledge together. As Sean has put it so beautifully in his theme, we need to collectively accept our responsibility for each other so that we can share that responsibility with the work that we produce for those who are outside of our field. So thank you really for coming, staying, really staying, and asking. And thanks to the staff, guys, for hanging in there and doing all you do.
All right. Take good care, everyone. Stay safe.